She was pregnant and alone, until the Billionaire Tycoon heard her sing on the street. Before starting this story, I'd like to take a moment to ask for your help. If you enjoy the stories we share, please help the channel reach the goal of 1,000 subscribers. I'd be very happy if you could subscribe. Without further delay, let's dive into this emotional story. The autumn wind whipped through downtown Seattle's Pike Place Market, carrying the scent of fresh coffee and the sound of distant ferry horns. Maya Rodriguez clutched her guitar case tighter against her growing belly, now 6 months round beneath her worn denim jacket. The baby kicked as she found her usual spot near the flower vendors, as if sensing it was time to work. She'd been singing on these streets for 3 months now, ever since David left. The engagement ring she'd pawned still left a pale band on her finger, a reminder of promises broken and dreams deferred. The apartment they'd shared was gone, along with her job at the music therapy clinic when morning sickness made her unreliable. Now, a cramped room above Mrs. Chen's noodle shop was home, and street performances were her lifeline. Maya tuned her guitar with practiced efficiency, ignoring the curious glances at her condition. Some people looked away, uncomfortable with the sight of a pregnant woman busking. Others dropped extra change, their pity as heavy as the coins in her case. She'd learned to smile through both reactions. "This one's for you, little one," she whispered to her belly before launching into a soulful rendition of Hallelujah. Her voice, trained at Berkeley before life derailed her plans, soared above the market's chaos. Years of classical training, blended with raw emotion born from heartbreak and hope. Across the street, Marcus Sterling sat trapped in Seattle traffic, his black Tesla Model S barely moving. The billionaire tech mogul drummed his manicured fingers against the steering wheel, his mind already racing through the board meeting awaiting him at Sterling Dynamics. At 38, he'd built an empire from a college dorm room app, but success felt increasingly hollow since his divorce 2 years prior. Then he heard it, a voice so pure it seemed to cut through the urban noise like light through fog. Marcus lowered his window, searching for the source. There, among the tourists and vendors, stood a young Latina woman with an acoustic guitar, her dark hair catching the afternoon sun. Her voice carried pain and beauty in equal measure, each note delivered with an authenticity that made his chest tighten. The traffic began moving, but Marcus couldn't drive away. He pulled into a nearby parking garage, paying the outrageous hourly rate without a second thought. By the time he walked back to the market, a small crowd had gathered around Maya. Children sat mesmerized on the ground while their parents swayed unconsciously to her music. She transitioned into an original song, something about broken wings learning to fly again. Marcus found himself studying her face, high cheekbones, expressive brown eyes that seemed to hold stories he wanted to hear. Then he noticed her condition, the protective way she cradled her guitar against her pregnant belly. When the song ended, applause rippled through the crowd. Maya smiled genuinely for the first time that day as bills and coins filled her case. But as people dispersed, exhaustion crept across her features. She swayed slightly, one hand moving to her lower back. Marcus approached cautiously, aware that his expensive suit and Italian leather shoes marked him as an outsider in this world. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Your voice is extraordinary." Maya looked up, taking in the tall stranger with salt and pepper hair and kind blue eyes. "Designer? Clothes, but no wedding ring. Tourist probably, rich tourist definitely." "Thank you," she replied, beginning to pack her guitar. "I appreciate that. I'm serious. I've heard Adele, Beyoncé, all the greats. You have something special." Marcus hesitated, then pulled out his wallet. "May I?" He placed a $100 e-SOR bill in her case, but Maya's pride flared. "I'm not a charity case, sir. I work for what I earn." "I know," Marcus said quickly. "That was payment for one of the most beautiful performances I've ever witnessed. You gave me something valuable. You should be compensated fairly." Their eyes met, and Maya saw no pity there, only respect. She nodded slowly, her defenses lowering, just a fraction. Thank you, that's very kind. As she stood to leave, another wave of dizziness hit. Marcus instinctively reached out to steady her, his hand gentle on her elbow. Are you all right? Just tired, Maya admitted, though her pallor suggested more than exhaustion. Long day. Marcus watched her walk away, something stirring in his chest that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the courage it took to stand alone on a street corner, pregnant and vulnerable, and still find the strength to create something beautiful. He had no idea that this chance encounter would change both their lives forever. 3 days later, Maya stood in the gleaming lobby of Sterling Dynamics, feeling like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole. The security guard had been skeptical when she'd given Marcus Sterling's name, but one phone call later, she was being escorted to the 42nd floor in an elevator that rose so smoothly she barely felt the motion. The call had come Tuesday morning while she was counting tips from the weekend. A professional voice had introduced herself as Sarah Chen, executive assistant to Mr. Sterling, with an unusual request. Would Maya be interested in discussing a potential opportunity? Maya had almost hung up, assuming it was a scam. Rich men didn't call struggling street musicians with opportunities, but something in the woman's tone, professional yet warm, had made her listen. An address, a time, and a promise that she had nothing to lose by hearing Mr. Sterling out. Now, studying her reflection in the elevator's polished walls, Maya second-guessed her decision to come. Her only professional outfit, a black dress she'd worn to job interviews months ago, was tight across her expanding middle. Her guitar case felt out of place among the sleek corporate surroundings. The elevator opened to reveal a modern office space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Sarah Chen, an elegant Asian woman in her 40s, greeted Maya with a warm smile that immediately put her at ease. Ms. Rodriguez, thank you so much for coming. Mr. Sterling is in his office. May I offer you some water? Tea? You must be tired. Maya accepted water gratefully, her throat dry from nerves. Sarah led her through the open workspace where employees, in casual but expensive clothes, worked at standing desks and collaborated in glass-walled conference rooms. Everything spoke of success and innovation. Marcus's corner office was surprisingly warm for such a corporate space. Personal touches, family photos, a collection of vintage guitars mounted on one wall, books on music theory mixed with business texts, revealed depths beyond the billionaire stereotype. He stood as they entered, and Maya was struck again by his presence. Tall and lean, with an easy confidence that came from years of making decisions that affected thousands of lives, but his eyes held the same kindness she'd remembered from their street encounter. Maya, thank you for coming. Please, sit wherever. You're comfortable. He gestured to a seating area with leather chairs and a sofa. How are you feeling? Confused, mostly, Maya replied honestly, settling into a chair that was probably worth more than her monthly rent. Your assistant mentioned an opportunity, but I can't imagine what that might be. Marcus sat across from her, leaning forward with his hands clasped. I haven't been able to stop thinking about your performance at Pike Place. Your voice, your presence. You have a rare gift. Thank you, but if you're looking for entertainment for a corporate event, I should mention I don't really do private parties. Maya's voice carried a careful distance born from experience with wealthy men and their expectations. Nothing like that, Marcus said quickly. I want to help you develop your career, record an album, find you representation, get your music heard by people who matter in the industry. Maya stared at him, certain she'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? I have connections throughout the music industry. I've invested in several independent labels. I know producers, talent scouts. With the right support, you could be… Stop. Maya held up her hand, her heart racing. Just stop. I don't understand. What's happening here? Why would you want to help me? You don't know me. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his gaze steady. My sister was pregnant at 19, alone, scared, incredibly talented, but convinced the world had no place for her. She was a painter. Some of the most beautiful work I've ever seen. He stood and walked to his desk, returning with a small framed canvas. The painting showed a mother and child, the brushstrokes bold and emotional. She painted this after her daughter was born, but she almost gave up art entirely because she thought being a single mother meant sacrificing her dreams. Maya studied the painting, recognizing the fear and hope battling in the painted mother's eyes. What happened to her? I helped her get back on her feet. Financially, yes, but more importantly, I helped her believe in herself again. She's had 3 gallery shows in the past 2 years. Her daughter is 12 now, and incredibly proud of her mom. That's a beautiful story, Maya said carefully. But I'm not your sister. No, you're not. But talent like yours shouldn't be wasted because life threw you a curveball. I'm not offering charity, Maya. I'm offering investment in something extraordinary. Maya's mind raced. The offer seemed too good to be true, and her experience had taught her that such things usually were. What would you want in return? Nothing beyond seeing your talent reach its potential. Well, Marcus smiled slightly. Maybe the satisfaction of knowing I helped launch the career of someone who's going to change how people think about music. And if I say no, then you walk out of here and nothing changes. No pressure, no consequences. Your life remains entirely your own. Maya sat back, one hand unconsciously moving to her belly where the baby was kicking up a storm, as if sensing the tension. She thought about the cramped room above the noodle shop, the ache in her back from standing on concrete for hours, the constant worry about having enough money for prenatal care. But she also thought about David's promises, about trusting too quickly, and the devastation when that trust was shattered. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course. Marcus reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a business card. My personal number is on there. Call me when you're ready, or if you have questions. And Maya? He met her eyes. Whatever. You decide. Don't stop singing. The world needs voices like yours. As Maya rode the elevator down 42 floors, she clutched the business card and wondered if she was about to make the best decision of her life, or the biggest mistake. Pregnancy Care Clinic's waiting room buzzed with quiet conversations and the rustle of magazines. Maya sat uncomfortably in a plastic chair, her back aching and her mind churning over the decision she'd been wrestling with for a week. Dr. Patricia Hoffman, her obstetrician, had been Maya's anchor through the emotional storms of the past months. Practical, warm, and refreshingly direct. Maya Rodriguez? The nurse's call pulled her from her thoughts. In the examination room, Dr. Hoffman's gentle hands checked the baby's position, while Maya stared at the ultrasound screen, mesmerized by the tiny profile that would soon be her daughter. Everything looks perfect, Dr. Hoffman said, wiping the gel from Maya's belly. Baby's measuring right on track, heart rate is excellent, how are you feeling? You look tired. Maya had been dreading this question. I'm managing. Working a lot, trying to save up before… She gestured vaguely at her stomach. Dr. Hoffman's expression grew serious. Maya, we've talked about stress and overexertion. Your blood pressure is elevated again. I know finances are tight, but you need to consider reducing your workload. I can't afford to work less, Maya said quietly. I barely make rent as is. The doctor sat down, her voice gentle but firm. What about the baby's father? Family support? Maya shook her head. It's just us. Dr. Hoffman was quiet for a moment, then pulled out a pamphlet. There are programs that can help. WIC, temporary assistance. You don't have to do this alone. But Maya had already tried those routes. The paperwork, the waiting lists, the bureaucratic maze that seemed designed to exhaust applicants into giving up. She needed something more immediate, more reliable. That evening, she found herself back at Pike Place Market despite the drizzle that kept most tourists away. Her usual spot was occupied by a young man with a violin, so she set up near the bookstore, her guitar case open hopefully despite the sparse crowd. The music felt different tonight, more desperate, less joyful. Her voice cracked on the high notes, fatigue making even simple songs challenging. The few people who stopped dropped coins rather than bills, and Maya felt the familiar panic rising. At this rate, she wouldn't make enough for groceries, let alone next month's rent. A familiar voice behind her made her turn. Rough night? Marcus Sterling stood there, but this wasn't the polished executive from his office. He wore jeans and a simple gray sweater, his hair slightly mussed from the rain. He looked more approachable, more human. "Mr. Sterling, I didn't expect to see you here. I live in the neighborhood," he explained, gesturing toward the upscale condos overlooking the water. "I heard your music and wondered—" He paused, studying her face in the streetlight. "You haven't called." Maya closed her guitar case, suddenly exhausted. "I've been thinking. Mind if I buy you coffee? There's a quiet place around the corner." The cafe was nearly empty, warm and fragrant with the smell of roasted beans. Marcus insisted on ordering for both of them. Decaf for her, regular for him, and a selection of pastries that made Maya realize how little she'd eaten that day. "I saw my doctor today," she found herself saying as they settled into a corner booth. "She's worried about stress, about me overdoing it, but I don't have choices." Marcus nodded, not rushing to speak. Maya appreciated that he didn't immediately launch into solutions or platitudes. "The thing is," she continued, "I want to trust you. Your offer is incredible, generous beyond anything I could have imagined. But I've been disappointed before. I've trusted the wrong person before." "Tell me about him," Marcus said gently. The words came slowly at first, then in a rush that surprised Maya. David, the charming music producer who'd swept her off her feet at a coffee shop open mic. The promises of collaboration that became expectations of submission. The engagement that felt more like ownership. The morning she'd told him about the pregnancy and watched his face transform from surprise to calculation to cold rejection. He said he couldn't be tied down by someone else's mistake. Maya finished, her voice barely audible. Called the baby a mistake. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. He was wrong. About the baby, about you, about everything. How? Can you be sure? Because I've seen you perform. I've seen the way you protect and nurture your music even when life is beating you down. That kind of strength, that dedication, those are the qualities that make great mothers and great artists. Maya felt tears threatening and blinked them back. What if I'm not good enough? What if you invest all this time and money and I disappoint you? Marcus reached across the table, not quite touching her hand but close enough that she felt the warmth of his presence. Maya, I've built my career on recognizing potential. Sometimes it's in a line of code, sometimes it's in a business model, sometimes it's in a person. I see something in you that's worth investing in, not just financially but emotionally. And if things go wrong, if the music industry chews me up and spits me out, then we'll figure out another path. But Maya, what if things go right? What if your daughter grows up watching her mother pursue her dreams and succeed? What kind of example would that set? Maya thought about Dr. Hoffman's warnings, about the stress that was affecting both her and the baby. She thought about the cramped room above the restaurant, about the uncertainty that kept her awake at night. Then she thought about the painting in Marcus's office, about his sister who'd found the courage to create again. If I say yes, she said slowly, I need to understand exactly what you're offering. No surprises, no hidden expectations. Marcus smiled, and Maya saw genuine relief in his expression. Fair enough. Here's what I propose. For the next hour, they outlined a plan that seemed almost too good to be true. A small apartment where Maya could focus on writing and recording. Connections to producers who specialized in acoustic, soulful music like hers. Financial support during the pregnancy and after. Structured as an advance against future earnings rather than charity. Most importantly, complete creative control. Maya's voice, Maya's songs, Maya's vision. There's one more thing, Marcus said as they prepared to leave. I'd like to be involved in the process, not controlling it but present for it. I want to see this journey through with you. Maya studied his face, searching for the catch she'd learned to expect. But she saw only sincerity and something else, a loneliness that mirrored her own. Okay, she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "Let's do this." As they shook hands across the table, Maya felt her daughter kick strongly, as if approving of the decision. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to hope that everything was going to be all right. Before continuing with the story, I'd like to take a moment to ask for your help. If you're enjoying this story, please help the channel reach the goal of 1,000 subscribers. I'd truly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Now, back to the story. The recording studio tucked away in Seattle's Georgetown district buzzed with creative energy, despite the early morning hour. Maya sat in the control room, headphones draped around her neck, watching through the glass partition as sound engineer Tommy Martinez fine-tuned microphone levels. Her new acoustic guitar, a custom-made Taylor that Marcus had insisted she needed, gleamed under the studio lights. 3 weeks had passed since she'd moved into the small but comfortable apartment Marcus had arranged in Capitol Hill. For the first time since her pregnancy began, Maya woke each morning without the immediate weight of financial panic. Instead, anticipation filled her days as she worked with producer Janet Reyes, a Grammy-nominated artist who specialized in nurturing authentic voices in an industry obsessed with manufactured pop. "How are you feeling about Broken Wings today?" Janet asked, settling into the chair beside Maya. At 50-something, Janet carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd survived decades in music without compromising her artistic integrity. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a colorful headband, and her vintage band t-shirt spoke to a lifetime spent in studios like this one. Maya rubbed her belly, now 7 months round, and making even sitting at the piano a logistical challenge. "Ready, I think. The baby's been kicking every time I practice it, like she knows it's important." "Smart kid," Janet smiled. "She's got good taste in music." Through the glass, Maya could see Marcus arrive with coffee for the team. Over the past weeks, he'd become a regular presence at the studio, not as an interfering investor, but as someone genuinely fascinated by the creative process. He'd sit quietly in the corner, sometimes working on his laptop, but more often simply listening as Maya found her voice in ways she'd never imagined possible. "Places, everyone," Tommy called out. "Let's capture some magic." Maya settled behind the microphone, her guitar cradled carefully over her bump. Broken Wings had started as a poem she'd written during her darkest nights above the noodle shop, verses about dreams deferred and trust betrayed. But working with Janet had helped her find the hope buried beneath the pain, transforming the song into something more than just heartbreak. The opening chords rang out pure and clear, and Maya closed her eyes, letting the music transport her. When she began to sing, her voice carried all the raw emotion of those lonely nights, but also the strength she'd found in choosing to fight for her future. "I thought I was flying, but I was just falling. Believed all your promises, ignored my heart's calling. Now here in the darkness, I'm learning to see that broken wings heal when you set yourself free." In the control room, Marcus found himself holding his breath. Each time Maya performed, she seemed to access deeper layers of herself, finding melodies and emotions that left everyone in the room stunned. This wasn't just talent. This was artistry born from lived experience, polished by technical skill but powered by pure authenticity. Janet caught his eye and nodded appreciatively. They'd both seen artists with powerful voices, but Maya possessed something rarer, the ability to make listeners feel her story as if it were their own. As the song built to its climactic bridge, Maya's voice soared with a freedom that seemed to surprise even her. The lyrics she'd crafted told of transformation, of finding strength in vulnerability, of choosing hope over bitterness. "So I'll spread these mended wings and rise above the storm. What tried to break me only made me strong. This heart that learned to shatter learned to sing a different song." When the final chord faded, the studio fell silent. Tommy pulled off his headphones, shaking his head in amazement. "Maya, that was... I've been doing this for 20 years, and that just gave me chills." Janet was already making notes, her excitement evident. "That's the one. That's your lead single right there." Maya looked through the glass at Marcus. whose expression mixed pride with something deeper, a kind of awe that made her cheeks warm. When she joined them in the control room, he stood and applauded softly. "How do you do that?" he asked. "How? Do you take pain and turn it into something so beautiful?" "I don't know," Maya admitted. "It just happens. Like the music knows what I need to say better than I do." Over lunch at a nearby deli, the team discussed next steps. The album was taking shape beautifully. 5 songs recorded, 3 more in various stages of completion. Janet had already reached out to contacts at streaming platforms and radio stations, generating interest that surprised everyone with its intensity. "There's something I need to tell you," Marcus said as they walked back to the studio. "I've been getting calls. Word is spreading about what we're doing here and people want to hear more." Maya felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. What kind of people? Good people. A&R representatives, booking agents for venues that would be perfect for your sound. There's interest in a showcase performance, maybe at the Triple Door or even the Paramount Theater. Maya had dreamed of performing there since she was a teenager, never imagining it might actually be possible. But the thought of stepping onto a stage that big, especially while pregnant, felt overwhelming. "I don't know if I'm ready for that level of exposure," she said quietly. Marcus stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Maya, you're ready for anything. I've watched you grow into your artistry over these past weeks. You're not the same person who was singing on street corners out of desperation. You're an artist who happens to be singing on street corners because that's where your journey began. But what if people don't connect with the music the way you and Janet do? What if I get up there and freeze? Then you remember that you've already survived the hardest part," Marcus said gently. "You've already chosen to bet on yourself. Everything else is just sharing that choice with a wider audience." That afternoon, as Maya worked through a new song with Janet, she felt something shift inside her. The baby kicked strongly, as if responding to the music, and Maya realized that her daughter was already part of this journey. Every note, every lyric, every moment of courage was building the foundation for the life they'd share. When Marcus knocked on the studio door to say goodbye for the day, Maya made a decision that surprised them both. "Set up the showcase," she called out through the glass. "Let's see what happens when we take this music to the people." The smile that spread across Marcus's face was worth every moment of fear, and Maya knew that whatever came next, she was finally, truly ready for it. The Triple Door's intimate stage gleamed under warm spotlights as the last of the evening's dinner crowd settled into their seats. Maya stood in the narrow backstage area, one hand on her 8-month belly, the other gripping her guitar neck with white knuckles. Through the heavy curtain, she could hear the murmur of conversation from an audience that included music journalists, industry professionals, and Marcus's carefully curated guest list of potential collaborators. "Breathe, Mia," Janet whispered, placing a steady hand on Maya's shoulder. "Remember, they're not here to judge you. They're here because word of your talent has already reached them. You've already won them over before you've sung a single note." Maya nodded, trying to absorb Janet's confidence. The past month had been a whirlwind of preparation, vocal coaching, stage presence workshops, and endless rehearsals that had pushed her artistic boundaries while accommodating her changing body. The simple black maternity dress she wore had been chosen specifically to let her music speak louder than her appearance, though she felt beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with fashion. Through a gap in the curtain, she spotted Marcus at a corner table, his attention focused entirely on the stage, despite the networking conversations swirling around him. Their relationship had evolved into something she couldn't quite name, not romantic but deeper than professional, built on mutual respect and shared investment in her success. He'd become her advocate, her sounding board, and surprisingly, her friend. Maya Rodriguez, everyone. The host's voice carried across the room, and suddenly there was no more time for doubt. She walked into the lights, her guitar case slung across her back, moving carefully but confidently. The audience's chatter faded as she settled onto the stool that had been positioned center stage, adjusting the microphone with the practiced ease of someone who'd spent countless hours perfecting her setup. Good evening, Maya said, her voice carrying clearly through the room. My name is Maya Rodriguez, and I want to thank you for being here tonight. 6 months ago, I was singing on street corners, hoping to make enough money for groceries. Tonight, I'm here to share songs that were born from that struggle but speak to something bigger, the power of choosing hope when life offers you every reason to give up. She strummed the opening chords of Broken Wings, and the room fell, completely silent. But instead of the studio version the audience might have heard through industry connections, Maya had rearranged the song for live performance, stripping it down to its emotional core. Her voice, strengthened by months of professional training but still carrying the raw authenticity that had stopped Marcus in Seattle traffic, filled every corner of the intimate venue. The song built slowly, each verse adding layers of meaning, as Maya's voice soared and dipped, finding spaces between the notes where pure emotion lived. When she reached the bridge, something magical happened. The audience wasn't just listening anymore. They were participating, their silent attention creating an energy that lifted her performance to new heights. As the final chord faded, the applause was immediate and sustained. Maya saw tears in some faces, knowing smiles in others, and the kind of engaged attention that told her she'd successfully shared her story in a way that made it theirs too. That song, she continued, was written during the darkest period of my life, but it taught me something important. Our broken places don't define our limitations. They define our capacity for healing, for growth, for becoming something beautiful that we never could have been without the breaking. She moved through her set with growing confidence, sharing the stories behind each song, creating an intimacy that transformed the formal showcase into something more like a living room concert. When she performed Lullaby for Tomorrow, a song she'd written for her unborn daughter, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, but it was the final song that brought the room to its feet. Instead of closing with one of her recorded tracks, Maya had chosen to debut something new, written just that week when she'd finally processed the full scope of her journey. This last song is called The Voice That Saves Us, she said, her hand resting on her belly as the baby kicked in response to the stage lights. It's about discovering that sometimes the voice we most need to hear is our own. The song was different from anything she'd recorded, more hopeful, more expansive, with a melody that seemed to reach beyond the confines of the small stage. As Maya sang about finding courage in vulnerability, about choosing to trust again after betrayal, about building new dreams from the ashes of old ones, she felt something shift in the room's energy. This wasn't just a showcase anymore. This was a moment of connection, of shared humanity, of the kind of authentic experience that reminded everyone present why they'd fallen in love with music in the first place. When the song ended, the standing ovation seemed to go on forever. Maya stood carefully, one hand on her guitar, the other acknowledging the applause with genuine humility and joy. Through the lights, she could see Marcus on his feet, applauding with tears streaming down his face. Backstage afterward, the congratulations came in waves. Record label executives exchanged business cards with Janet, booking agents discussed potential tour dates, and music journalists asked thoughtful questions about her songwriting process. But the moment that mattered most came when Marcus finally made his way through the crowd to find her. "Maya," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "What you did out there, that wasn't just a performance, that was transformation. For you, for everyone who heard it. I couldn't have done it without you," she replied, meaning every word. This whole journey, everything that led to tonight, none of it would have been possible if you hadn't taken a chance on a pregnant woman singing on the street. Marcus shook his head. "I didn't take a chance on you, Maya. I recognized something that was already there. Tonight you showed the world what I heard that first day. A voice that doesn't just sing songs, but changes lives." 3 months later, Maya's debut album topped the independent charts, and The Voice That Saves Us became an anthem for anyone who'd ever had to rebuild their life from scratch. But more importantly, baby Sophia was born healthy and strong. entering a world where her mother's voice had already made space for dreams to flourish. As Maya held her daughter for the first time, humming a gentle melody that would become Sophia's first lullaby, she understood that some rescues work both ways. Marcus had heard her voice and offered her a chance, but in finding her own strength, she'd given him something too. A reminder that success isn't just about building empires, but about building connections that make both lives richer. Chiu, voice that had stopped traffic on a Seattle street corner, had become the voice that saved them both.